right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest Ronald Andrus. This evening we're talking about ghost hunting and paranormal in general, ghost experiences. Ronald, let's start off with having you tell us a little bit about your background and who are the ghost hunters extraordinaire.
Well, you got me as the founder. I started the team back in 2014. We started it because I experienced a lot of stuff when I was, I experienced a lot of paranormal when I was a child, about 10 or 11 years old. My bedroom didn't have no windows. The only light source that came was from the bathroom light. I used to see shadows like people walk, on the walls at night when I was sleeping. And obviously, I thought it was just me being afraid of the dark, and being a kid. So, and then I started, as I got older, it was still going on. So I started experiencing other things as well, like not just shadows, but actual outlinings of spirits.
Oh, really? And so, how'd you, obviously it evolved into a love and a hobby, but at the time, I assume that was terrifying.
It was very terrifying. It scared me as a kid.
Right. So how'd you turn that into something that you actually pursued instead of were scared of? Well,
I started, like I said, with about 2014, 2015, I started to watch some of the paranormal shows on TV, and I realized that it wasn't something that was in my mind. And so I did some research on it through the online, and me and my best friend, we decided to start a team because we actually tried to join a couple other paranormal teams, and we didn't, with no responses back from them, we decided to start our own.
Yeah, I found that to be the case a lot when we're gunning around for guests and stuff like that. That there's a lot of non-responsive paranormal groups, and I think that's because maybe they no longer exist. That's I'm not implying that they're rude. I think that maybe their internet footprint is still there, but their group is not. So
in a sense, their presence online is a digital ghost.
Very clever.
Thank you. That shall be my contribution to the internet. I'm out. I'm good.
Thank you. This is one thing that Kara and I have talked about, going out and doing some of this stuff, but I don't know what it entails. I don't have the technological anything. The first time you guys went out and did this, how equipped were you? How ready for the game were you?
Well, we weren't really all that familiar with all the equipment and stuff. We just had regular camcorders, and I bought a voice recorder at Walmart. And we actually went to Fort Stanwix for the very first time. It was during the daytime because they don't allow any nighttime investigations. The Historical Society there will not allow it. So we went there during the daytime and then just kind of walked around and took pictures and took video and tried some EVPs. And later on that night when I went home, I actually seen a silhouette of a blonde woman, probably about 16, 17 years old, in a big blue ruffled dress, standing in the doorway between my living room and my kitchen. And it kind of made me jump a little bit, but I think that she was somebody who might have followed us home from the fort.
Is that a common thing, that things follow people home, and I guess really the question would be, when they follow you home, do they go back?
Yeah, they do eventually have to go back. I think it might have something to do with the energy field, that they have to absorb enough energy. And if they go to your house, they're away from their location where they spent most of their life, so they have to eventually go back.
So it's like you're dragging it and then it snaps back, and that's reassuring, I guess, is that
yeah.
You're not carrying it with you for the remainder of your days. Okay. Well, let's talk about that experience. Your Fort Stanwix haunted history experience. So, what is Fort Stanwix?
Well, Fort Stanwix was part of the Revolutionary War back in 1777. And
well, while you're looking, the East Coast really amazes me. With us out here on the West Coast,
there's not nearly as much.
Right. There's just not nearly as much structures and remembered places to go to, of course. We all know.
Unless you want to talk to like some spectral prospectors or conquistadors or whatever, there's just not a whole lot in the way of history.
Right. And we all know that Columbus discovered people who were already here, but
Sure.
not a lot in the way of structures out here to sort of connect us to specific parts of the land or anything like that. So it's always interesting on the East Coast where you have a building with potentially 400 years of history.
Well, yeah, like I said, Fort Stanwix was in August of 1777 against the British and the American Indian troops. It was the whole war was going on. Oriskany Battlefield was actually involved with it too because they came across the trail from Oriskany Battlefield. There was a little bit of fight. There was some fighting over at Fort Stanwix, and eventually the war ended. And all the soldiers that were stationed at Fort Stanwix, they just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And they were waiting for notification that the war was over, and nobody gave them notification. Eventually, somebody came with a letter and said that the war was over, so they all left the fort, and it just sat abandoned for a while. But there was many deaths, from like the cold and the sickness.
And going back to the prospector thing, if it sat there empty for years and years, who knows what else went on there. Wow.
So when it comes to like that blind woman you saw who followed you, obviously she wasn't a soldier. What do you think might have been her deal? Or is there any way to know?
Well, it wasn't just the soldiers that stayed there. The families of the soldiers actually stayed there as well, like the women and the children. During the cold months, though, where it was like really cold, like around December, January, February, they the wives and the children would go off to another fort, because this fort was just too cold for them to survive, there.
And at the risk of being crude, Kara, there was always a soldier entourage of people to assist the soldiers in off hours in a female capacity.
Yes.
So there's always that. All right, so how do you pick a place? I've thought about this. Kara and I've just recently moved to Ashland, Oregon. So now I'm plopped down in a new part of the country. It's really 2 hours north, but someplace that I wouldn't have gone to. And, I'm kind of looking up, and the closest I've come to is like most haunted places in Southern Oregon, but how do you pick a place to go and check out?
Well, a lot of them were from like the TV shows as well. I wanted to go in and try to experience what they experienced, try to copy it. There was a few places that we went to that we've been able to do that. Like one of the places that I was always intrigued with was Eastern State Penitentiary. Because it's a big prison. We actually experienced some really good evidence there.
Well, I would assume that penitentiaries in general
would be
have a lot of trauma, a lot of bad stories. Over the years in talking to paranormal researchers, we get the gist, and I think anybody who follows a belief in ghosts on any sort of level gets the gist that a traumatizing experience tends to lead to the ghost sticking around, and a prison seems to be ripe for the paranormal picking. So you said you got some good evidence. It's hard with paranormal. So what is good evidence? What'd you get from there?
Well, what we captured there is we actually captured some voices from some of the cells. It was all the property there it's huge. So everything was kind of muffled out. There was no sound. There was no background sound from anywhere. But we set up some cameras on some of the upper floors, showing down the corridors on the lower floors. We actually captured a shadow man coming out of one of the cells on the left-hand side and go walk across the corridor to the cell across from it and disappear into the cell.
In those moments, now that you've done this for a while? Are you more terrified or are you more excited?
A little bit of both. I did have an experience. We went to the Hinsdale house in Hinsdale, New York, and something there either tried to attach itself to me or tried to attack me, spiritually, because I was sick for like a week and I was about ready to give up. I was about ready to quit. I tell everybody, I said, if somebody tried to give me $1,000 to go back in that house, I would not go back in that house. That house really terrified me. But there's a lot of other places that, that excite me, because we do residential cases as well and, help people in their houses. So I enjoy doing that. I enjoy helping people. So.
All right. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest, Ronald Andrus. We're talking about paranormal and paranormal research. You can't go too far into talking about paranormal research without discussing some of the tools that people use. You said when you started out that you were just dealing with an audio recorder and a regular camcorder. There seems to be lots of controversial tools, spirit boxes, ghost boxes, divination, mediums. What do you go in armed with? Do you go in armed to the teeth, or do you just try to go in as yourself? What do you take with you?
As I've learned over the last few years, a lot of it is like your own personal feelings. Usually your personal feelings. If something's around, you're going to feel it. But we do use a lot of equipment. Just try to confirm the feelings that that some of us have. Like we use the spirit box, voice recorders, camcorders, regular cameras. A lot of the camcorders we use are the infrared ones. So it's got like night vision, so you can see in the dark.
Right.
We use the REM pod. We have actually had good responses with the REM pod.
Yeah. What is that?
It's like a round device. It's got an antenna that is on the top of it. And if some kind of energy comes into contact with it, it's got some lights on top. It'll start beeping and the lights will light up.
Well, at the risk of being the movie nerd that I am, it's like a PKE meter. I bet you Kara is not getting this reference because she is probably too young to even care about ever having watched Ghostbusters. But
everyone has watched Ghostbusters. This is America. If you don't watch it, they take away your driver's license.
Yeah, well, I am constantly dropping pop culture references that you should get, and you are not.
Okay, I've also seen Star Wars, Chauncey. No. I mean, Ghostbusters is a seminal film. I've seen it.
All right. You got my wife beat on that one. And then, the spirit box seems to be pretty controversial in how people feel about them. I'm watching this show at the order of one of the girls at Para X called Hellier. And there's an interesting scene in the episode I watched last night where they're actually using a spirit box with the person on the spirit box having their eyes and ears covered and saying whatever word comes to them so that they can try to have a conversation with him. What do you take from these spirit boxes? Do you find that they're really hit and miss, or do you find that you get some good stuff out of them?
They're hit or miss, but there's been some times, like there's a location that we went to. It's called Split Rock Quarry in Syracuse, New York area, where we actually took the spirit box there, and we've done like 10 to 20 investigations into this place. And every time that we've gone there, the same names come over the spirit box. So, I mean, it's just, with it scanning the radio frequencies, there's a chance that it could be just coming off the radio signals. But to have the same names come through like every single time, it's just, there's no way there's a coincidence for that.
And where was this?
It's called Split Rock Quarry. It's up in Syracuse, New York.
So you say you've gone there a bunch of times. Is there any paperwork or any paper trail that you can maybe chase down one of those names? I mean, a quarry, it seems like it'd be hard to find.
Actually, believe it or not, yes. There's a cemetery that's up there. It's called Oakwood Cemetery. It's up in the south side of Syracuse. Mm-hmm. They've actually got a memorial up there for the people that died in 1918 up there. And all the names are on it.
So were you able to make any name connections?
Yes. A lot of the names that came through the spirit box every single time was Frank, Robert, and then it was a Christine. We don't know who Christine is. We haven't been able to find out who she is. But the Frank and Robert, there's Robert Keefe, and then there's a Francis. No, it's Robert Burke, and then Francis Keefe.
That must be inspiring when you can make those real world connections. A lot of the time in a lot of paranormal things, you're dealing with cryptids, you're dealing with aliens, you're dealing with stuff. There's not necessarily always a real world connection. It must be inspiring when you can find that real world connection.
Yeah. And not only that, but we like to hear the stories of, if we can get some stories out of the people that, have passed away up there.
Yeah. And I assume that you use that for conversation fodder when you're going back, trying to get those EVP recordings. You're trying to personally connect with them.
Yes.
Okay. So I might not be very good at pronouncing some of this, but the Orskany Battlefield Haunted History.
We've gone there during the daytime. We've never gone there at night because they're part of the Historical Society in Rome as well. So they really don't allow any overnight, investigations there. I mean, basically during the daytime, you can just walk around and wander and, check it out. And there's usually not very many people up there. So it's easy to do something up there. We actually had Spirit Box up there, and we actually heard the voice, or we heard the name come through as General Herkimer. So, and he was one of the generals that got shot up in that area.
So, is it true that nighttime is the right time to make these connections?
Sometimes it's during the daytime. It depends, because I've had a couple of investigations during the daytime. And at residential investigations, a lot of the stuff happens during the daytime. It doesn't really matter day or night. The nighttime it seems it's a lot easier because people ain't going around, doing their daily thing. There's not much traffic. It's quieter, so it's easier to concentrate.
Right, you get less involvement, and I would assume that if we're dealing with ghosts, we're dealing with some sort of level of psychic something, and when it comes to a lot of people being around, that might add static or something like that to the equation.
Well, also when you're doing EVP recordings and stuff during the daytime, if there's if there's somebody that's 20 feet away or 100 feet away and they're talking, you get that in the background of the voice recordings.
All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland, and our guest, Ronald Andrus. We're talking about ghost hunters extraordinaire and paranormal investigation. I think as fans of this, and then, Karen and I are both fans of anything Gothic, Yes. So when it comes to this note here to talk about Rolling Hills Asylum in East Bethany, New York,
we are dying to talk about this asylum.
We are dying to talk about this. And asylums, first I got to say, or I got to ask, was there a reasonable amount of history with this asylum? Is it something that there was, some sort of paper trail on, or was it, something even worse where it was filled with madmen and they all burned to death in a fire and nobody knows what happened?
Oh, no. There's a long history of it.
Oh, good.
A very long history.
All right, so let's get started there. How'd you get called to this place? How'd you get pulled into the Rolling Hills Asylum?
This is one of the locations that, like I said, that the Ghost Adventures team and Ghost Hunters and all the shows on TV, they went to this location.
So it's famous for being haunted?
Yeah. So I was pretty intrigued with the location, so I decided to set something up there and with the team, and we've been there about 3-4 times now. Mm-hmm. And we actually became really good friends with the lady that owns the property.
So yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is this the sort of place that you have to get permission to go into?
Yes.
And she's receptive to all that. She's receptive to letting people check it out. That's sort of part of her love of the place.
Yes. And she does charge fees to go into this place. Sometimes it's a little costly, but it's all the money that she gets from the place. It's like a full-time job for her, so she is actually using that money to fix it up and try to get it restored the way it was.
So when you go there, do you get to spend the night and everything?
usually a lot of the investigations, she does do like public investigations and stuff. And it's like from like 7 o'clock until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're there at a decent time.
But you're close enough where you just go home and go to bed. You don't actually sleep in the asylum.
No, I mean, there's times that I probably like go just over to Moravia, New York, and just kind of like, you know, get a motel or something over there.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my wife to be willing to spend the night at one of these places, and she is just not willing. Can't talk her into it. It can't happen. So I just looked up a picture of this, and this place is familiar to me, and I am a horror movie fanatic. I'm thinking this place might have actually been in some films.
Have you ever heard of the producers Christopher St. Booth or Philip St. Booth or Philip Booth?
No, I haven't.
Because they made a couple movies with that location as well.
I want to say from memory that it might be a movie called The Tunnel, but I'm not sure. I'll have to check that out and follow up on social media. But you know, my horror movie ticker is saying The Tunnel, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
So, what were some of the things you experienced up there?
It's actually quite amazing because the history of it is really interesting. I've seen pictures where they've seen people standing, you know, with faces on the outside of windows that are like three stories up. They've caught the shadow. They've actually caught the shadow of the gentle giant that they call him there. It's name's Roy Krause. He was a 12-year-old boy that got dropped off there by his parents, and he had giantism, lived his whole life there until he was in his 50s, and then he died. But we've actually experienced some stuff there as well, like Shadow Hallway. Shadow Hallway is awesome. If you got like not a very bright flashlight or even a glow stick, if you hold it up, you can see shadows of people walking on the walls as you're standing still. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence that we captured there is they do haunted like tours and stuff around Halloween there. We went there probably in March or so, and they had it still set up as the reenactment for the Halloween attraction. Mm-hmm. And so they had one of the freezers off the kitchen as a padded wall. So we went in there and we were doing EVPs. We had a spirit box going, and we had the camcorder going as well. While we had all this going, you know, I was sitting on the floor and, you know, trying to communicate, and we didn't hear it with our own ears, but only the audio from the camcorder picked it up. We heard a little girl say ball, and it was like, I mean, it was literally a Class A EVP. I mean, it was the best EVP I've ever heard before. And it's kind of funny because the very first time that we went there, which was a couple years previous to that, I actually was in the room that was called the children's room, and I tried to sit on the floor and play ball with a kid with a child there. Mm. And so obviously somebody must have followed me and wanted to play ball this time.
Right, remembered you. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland with Ronald Andrus. Don't miss out. Come on back. There's some great stories. You know, I want to spend the night in an asylum. I know it's weird. I want to sleep there. I want to try to sleep there. All right, so don't miss out. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland, and our guest, Ronald Andrus. We're talking about ghost hunting and paranormal experiences. You know, Ronald, I gotta say, evidence seems really hard to come by, and you know, a lot of this seems to be sort of belief from experience and stuff like that. So for you, I'm sure there's two different types of evidence. There is the evidence that you yourself feel and experience and say, hey, I know. And then there's that concrete evidence that you would take to a skeptic and say, listen to this. Let's try to get an answer for both of those. You know, what is Ghost Hunters Extraordinaire's most convincing evidence? Let's start with yours personally, like your personal experience that basically made you say, okay, this place is for real.
For myself, like I said, it was the one that it was with that EVP at Rolling Hills Asylum. Because we didn't, like I said, I had the voice recorder going, I had the spirit box going, and the only audio that picked it up was from the camcorder. And we didn't hear it with our own ears. I didn't hear it until I played it back and listened to it. It gave me goosebumps when I heard it. It was pretty amazing. So
let's say going to a skeptic, what would you take to them and say, listen, this is it. This is my most convincing piece of evidence?
Well, unfortunately, with skeptics, you kind of, even if you bring it to them, any piece of evidence, they're still going to say that unless they were there to experience it themselves, they're still not going to be convinced.
From following this stuff and, following the shows and doing the research, do you feel that there's a bit of evidence out there, a bit of video evidence that you would say is the most convincing? Because, there's a lot of paranormal researchers collecting their stuff. Is there something out there that would really get a skeptic's attention? Not somebody who doesn't believe, but a skeptic.
Well, there's a few people that I work with at my full-time job, and people that I'm friends with that I've gone and shown them some of my evidence, and it terrifies them because it's like they don't want to believe in it, but they see it and they're like, wow, and they get stood. They're like, I don't want to see that, because that's gonna scare me.
Well, that's how my wife feels. Is she's skeptical, but she's also terrified. Yeah. She's a healthy, terrified skeptic.
Before we close this out, I have a question that I always like to ask, and that's, is there anything to be scared of? Essentially, can ghosts hurt you, is my question.
Yes. There was a time that the location in Syracuse, New York, we weren't getting any evidence, and I was kind of being pushy. I was provoking a little bit, and I ended up having 3 scratches on my back. I've actually had that picture on my Facebook page, and you can see the 3 scratches right down my back.
And did you feel it when it happened?
No, actually, I didn't. I didn't feel it at all. And then what happened was, when I went home, I felt perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong. The next morning, after I woke up, though, I went and I took a nice hot shower, and I felt this burning sensation on my back. So I went and I looked in the mirror, and that's when I noticed those 3 scratches on my back.
Right.
Oh, that's scary. Yeah.
Would you say that's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you?
Not quite, actually.
Oh, good. Then what is the scariest thing that's ever happened to you?
The scariest thing that happened to me was at the same location at Skull Rock Quarry. When we first got to the location, it was probably roughly around 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, because they got hiking trails and stuff up there that you can walk around. And so we went inside of the place that's called the Rock Crusher. And that's where we did all the investigating. We were in there, and my phone before I left was about 70-80%. We were in there, we were doing an investigation, and it was actually the same night that I was provoking. And I turned, all of a sudden we were doing an EVP session, and my phone started to ding. And I went and looked at my phone, and it was showing that it was only down to 5%. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, why is my phone dying? I'm like, it was almost fully charged when we got here. And then I started to feel this tingling on the back of my neck, like spider webs, like goosebumps on the back of my neck. So I spun around, and it was this big, huge ball of illuminated mist standing just floating behind me. I screamed. I was like, and my friend Chris, he's got the camcorder in his hand. He goes, what? He goes, what'd you see? I said, there was a big ball of mist. He took and panned the camera to the right a little bit, and when he did that, you could see it. It just kind of zipped out the tunnel and just disappeared. But it was like I didn't realize it was behind me. I mean, it made me jump.
That is terrifying.
That's freaky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like something nasty might have been living out there. Well, not living, but
Right. Undeading.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So, in the movies earlier, you were just saying that your phone lost power, and in the movies, it's not uncommon that you see the lights flicker, flashlights go out. Does this happen often? Is that maybe something having to do with pulling the energy from things? Is this a common thing?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like in order for them to show themselves like that, like some kind of form or to communicate, they have to actually draw some energy. A lot of times they can draw out the energy from like the atmosphere, from nature, that's outside. But then there's other things like phones, camcorders, everyday electronics and stuff, and they can draw the energy from that and kill the batteries quick. And
a common question that I like to ask people, and I always get different answers. Well, let me start with this one. When you guys go and you do things, a lot of these paranormal groups will take somebody that they consider to be a medium or clairvoyant or something like that. Do you guys feel that you guys are doing this, or do you guys feel that you guys are just feeling things that normal people would feel in this situation, or do you feel that one of you is medium, clairvoyant, or something like that?
Well, actually, myself, I've done some research for a lot of things that, like I said, I've seen things, heard things, experienced things. I mean, I've seen dates and times, of past events that I'm not even aware of, just like visions and stuff like that. So I actually did like I said, I did some research online about it, and come to find out I'm what they consider an empath.
Well, empathy, empath seems to be the really sort of a common, when there's a haunting, normally it's associated with something tragic or strong feelings or something like that. And, some degree of empathy would probably most likely be able to connect with that. So another question that I really like to ask, and this is probably from my horror movie fandom, is are all the spirits that you run into, I realize you may not know the answer to this, are all the spirits that you run into spirits that were once alive, or are there spirits out there that were never alive?
See, that's an interesting question. I believe that all the spirits were pretty much alive. And the demons, though, I don't believe that they've ever been alive. Because there are some that are like, I don't know, they're so evil that just I don't even know if they've ever actually. I don't believe that they got an actual soul.
So yeah, even outside of demons, there's astral projection. A great recent movie, Insidious, really had to do with sort of, although it was portrayed as a demon, it was this sort of astral entity, and so that really got my mind thinking. I'm just all like, how many things are out there, that just were never alive. And being a fan of fiction, there's movies like Night of the Demons or From Beyond by H.P. Lovecraft, where they're talking about, these spiritual realms around us, and I just wonder, but I also realize that as people, the idea that we know a straight answer, is frankly, when I get a straight answer from a guest, sometimes that makes it a little more like iffy, because how would we know, I guess? Why would you be out there doing all this research if you knew the answers?
Well, you mentioned the 3 scratches thing at the quarry earlier, and that's, I guess, supposed to be sort of like a hallmark for demonic attack or whatever. Is that correct?
It's usually 3 scratches.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so
wild.
Is that what you think you might have encountered at the quarry? Is not a person, but some sort of demonic presence?
Well, there was one summer that we went up there really early, and it was probably around May-ish, and I actually found a horse skull that was up there, and somebody used it they must have used it for some satanic rituals or something up there, but it was kind of interesting because they took the horse skull and they put like at Halloween time, you'll find like the skull outdoor lights that you put on your house and stuff. They decorated it put them in the eye sockets, and they painted it and stuff. And I actually got a picture on Facebook where I'm holding the horse skull in my hand. I actually wanted to bring it home with me too. My wife was like, no, don't bring that home with
me. She's a smart woman.
There was other things like there was a burnt Ouija board that I found, just the corner piece of it.
That's funny. My family last night was watching Family Feud, and one of the things was, name something that you have in your house that your spouse doesn't know that you have in your house. And yours apparently would be a satanist decorated, illuminated cow skull or horse skull, it'd be all, oh, that's 5 people up on the board. Funny. All right. So when you do this, do people hire you, or, do people just contact you and you do your best to get to them? How does that work?
Well, we got a Facebook page. We've got probably almost like 3,000 followers right now. So, but we also have like a contact page where we show our evidence on Facebook. I mean, if people, we've actually got our names on the paranormal registry. There's an actual website that for paranormal groups throughout every state, and they can contact us through there. I have my personal cell phone number added to that. We do residential cases as well. It's all free of charge. So
when it comes to residential cases, is that a situation where people just feel better knowing, or are you somehow helping them to get rid of what's there?
Well, we're able to help them as well to get rid of it. We use like cleansing salts, saging, smudging. We use the St. Michael's prayer to, expel whatever is from the house. And we've actually had a couple of really good cases, that we've actually helped a few people.
And so how would people get in touch with you? Your Facebook page, and is that their best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, or the email address.
If you'd like to get in touch with him, extraordinaireghost@gmail.com, or of course check out Ghost Hunters Extraordinaire on Facebook. Thank you very much for being on the show. It's really been a lot of fun and really insightful. And we haven't had a ghost hunter on in quite some time, and I really enjoy it when we do, because of course we get a lot of news stories, which I like, but we also get parallels to other stories from other people. In this case, on the other side of the country, we had a woman on not too long ago in California, and she got the 3 scratches as well. So it's fun to make those comparisons. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. We hope you're willing to do it again.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thank you.